In this brief video, just going to take a look very quickly here at Matthew chapter 5, 1 through 12, oftentimes known as the Beatitudes. And so just going to make a few comments about the nature of the Beatitudes and what's trying to be conveyed here. Begin, first of all, that what's happening here in the Beatitudes is setting out eschatological blessings. In other words, it's setting out blessings that are to be anticipated for the future. So before we go into the actual content, let's go ahead and read the passage. So Matthew 5, starting with verse 1. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the poor in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." So let's begin here by looking at this Greek word that is translated in many translations as blessed. Greek word makarios. While it can be translated happy, and in some context it should be understood as a sense of happiness, that's not really what Jesus is trying to convey here in these Beatitudes. He's not laying out a way that a person, a disciple, can be happy in their lives. That's not the concern here. It's about the type of person or the type of people who are going to be blessed in the future. What a certain group of people are going to inherit or experience, or the status that they are going to have. So it's probably better understood as blessed, because blessed is going to focus here on God's initiative to bless those who remain righteous, particularly under difficult circumstances. So the background really for the Beatitudes, or many of the Beatitudes, is probably the piety of the poor, which we can find in places like Psalm 34, Psalm 37, Psalm 69, 33 through 34. And generally, so what Jesus is doing is he is announcing that people who would be perceived in the world as not being blessed by God because they are poor, because they are oppressed, because they are powerless in the world, nevertheless remain loyal to God. They remain true to his word. They continue to act in ways that are appropriate to the particular time of distress that they are under. And so it's this piety that the poor often exemplifies in their circumstances. So, for instance, a blessed are the poor in spirit, some have tried to understand this as an attitude, that people have a poor spirit or a humble spirit. No, as the parallel in Luke shows us to the Beatitudes, this is a blessing for people who are actually poor. So the world might look at people who are poor and not think they are blessed. We sometimes think about a person who is rich and prosperous as being blessed by God. But here, the idea is that it's actually the people who are poor and who are remaining faithful to God, that the kingdom of heaven belongs to them. They possess it now. And that is something that they are going to experience in the future. This kingdom that is supposed to be coming into the world is something that they will enter in. Now, it's not claiming that the rich who are righteous, can't enter into that kingdom, but the focus is really on those who might be perceived as not being blessed by God, as in fact those who really are. So we go through several of these. Blessed are those who are mourning. It doesn't really tell us what they are mourning about, but I would say they are mourning in this particular world and this particular circumstances. It's not so much mourning for sin, as some may have interpreted, but it's mourning because they are without. But the promise is that they will be comforted. They are going to be comforted when that kingdom arrives. Now, for verse 5, blessed are the meek, sometimes it has been said or pointed out that meek doesn't mean weak. But in a lot of ways, yes, it does mean weak. It means weak in particularly in a social context. So a person who is meek is powerless socially. It is both this idea of humbled not in the sense again of an attitude, but in the sense they are humbled because of their station in life. They don't have the same status as those who are rich and powerful. And they don't have access to power like the rich do. Uh, so, uh, so it does convey these, but it isn't conveying the idea of being a wimp or a doormat that people just run over you. But it is this description of the social status that a lot of people are in because they are powerless. Now, in a lot of these places where he is announcing blessings, Jesus is practically citing from a passage like Psalm 37, verses 11, 22, and 29. And so it is inverting the concepts of the type of people who are blessed by God. So, for instance, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Well, the word righteousness here in Greek might be interpreting or understanding the Hebrew concept of righteousness, tzaddik, which also can convey the idea of justice. And so the people who hunger and thirst for justice in the world, because they don't think that how they are being treated is fair, they're looking for God's justice. And so what's going to happen is they are going to be filled with that. They're going to be filled with God's justice in that future. They're not going to receive it necessarily now in this age, but in the age to come, they will receive it. And because of how they are being treated, if they respond by being merciful to those who maybe are not being merciful to them, they will be shown mercy by God. They're going to stay pure in heart. In other words, they're not going to contaminate themselves with sin in the context in which they find themselves. So these are people who will see God. They're going to be peacemakers to those who may be hostile towards them. They may be persecuted because of justice. But all of this is going to be rectified in that future kingdom of heaven once it has arrived. So, in the Beatitudes, Jesus then is promising a blessing to those who resist wrong done to them by showing kindness, gentleness, and faith. So that's what the Beatitudes are basically, uh, showcasing. All right, we'll leave that brief introduction to Matthew 5, 1 through